It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. And we are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is to help them move beyond the act of enabling or being open or having a sensitivity to a hover attempt by what is known to them to be an emotionally manipulative individual, someone who is using them and really not giving like respect in return, someone who is malignant, narcissist, or psychopathic, someone who is trying to pull the wool over your eyes while they take away your goodness, and then you thank them for taking away your goodness. It's a very, very insipid sort of manipulation, very sophisticated, that really, once you only kind of know what's happening, will you stop falling prey to them. Now, before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to those of you who have recently donated to the channel. Thank you so much for your donations and sharing the specifics, as well as some of the videos and pictures that you have sent for me, either from your recovery dates or the areas of where you live. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to really kind of dive in and understand the dynamics that can be trying to get the best of you and plague you. It can be very harrowing, very difficult, and very challenging. So thank you once again for your recent donations. And absolutely, if the channel here, if we have been a positive influence or impact in your life and the tools are really resonating with you, absolutely feel free to give back and interact with the channel. There's a PayPal donate now button on the About tab here on YouTube. So thank you so much for your contributions and sharing some of your beautiful videos and pictures where you live. I especially love some of the aerial ones we got in, so thank you so much. Super cool, as well as some of the just beautiful nature shots. So gorgeous. And I really want to kind of dive in and focus in on the emotional dynamics that are going on when we look at a hover attempt that's getting you to feel less than, weak, coming from a unempowered space. And that is particularly the feeling of guilt. And not wanting to get, a guilt or a feeling that, you have an uncertainty or a trepidation about declaring your boundaries, of reinforcing your truth, what you knowing to be the case. So you've seen what you've seen with your own eyes. You've felt what you've felt with your own heart. You've witnessed these things, and you know this to be the unequivocal truth. Yet it's very difficult when you're tested, when you're challenged, when the hover attempt happens, or while you're going through your day, the ruminations, or trying to follow up on things to take your empowerment to the next level. Instead of feeling safe, secure, and capable, you have this feeling of trepidation or guilt. You don't know if you're doing the right thing. You have a difficulty saying no. Your buttons are still being pushed. And that is because really the guilt is coming from the concern that you have as an empathetic, sentient being. And oftentimes this person has held a very close, near and dear place in your heart, where you have probably given to them and coddled them and been a resource or a supply for them in the past. And so they have got you in your innocence, and your innocence there and your naiveness, or you're not seeing the forest for the trees, or not kind of seeing how this was happening because you were in the enmeshment stage, you were in the forming a healthy relationship with a healthy person stage. You are hitherto unknown what was going on and what was transpiring, the acts of this type of person, or understanding them as a personality disorder and what they do to manipulate, to play people like a puppet, to get people to feed their ego as supply. Yet when it comes to you, it's just, you're kicked to the curb. You're not even given a second thought. There is no empathy. There is no heart there. There is no soft spot. You have seen this and you've known this with your own eyes. Yet there's a guilt that comes with setting and reinforcing your own boundary. The guilt is really coming from, once again, that empathetic, sentient part of you, which is fearful of being neglectful of this person. You're afraid to neglect, you don't want to be called out. You are unconsciously afraid of the repercussions, i.e. having, a backup for your feelings. In other words, if they were to pounce back at you and be resistive, would you be able to handle it? In other words, if they were to go into a narcissistic rage, why aren't you, dancing around? Why aren't you coddling me? Why aren't you making up, why are you, not letting me walk on you? Why aren't you letting me take from you anymore? Why are you resistive? Why are you seeing it now? So they're going to challenge you and see if they can play you. And so it's the fear of this perhaps struggle that could result as a result of, standing your boundaries and saying no. Will you be able to reinforce and back up your own decisions? So you have to come to that awareness in the privacy of this video, in the place of your mind, while you kind of look at the why the cause has created the effect, and know unequivocally in how you're going to handle it. So it's having the tool out at the ready. So it'll help you to alleviate the guilt. So you don't want to be neglectful. You don't want to say no. You're feeling a tinge of loss and regret and remorse and disappointment that this did not work out. But you've known what it is, and it's sometimes difficult. It's a very sorrowful lesson to learn. It's a very sorrowful pill to swallow, to say this is how this person is. I wish otherwise. I want otherwise. I want what I cannot have. And so, people want to fit in. They want to have the approval. So having approval from this person oftentimes has held a high place in your emotional repertoire. So it's to say, this person's approval has meant so much to me before. They've been on the emotional pedestal. They've been an authority for me in my life. I have idealized or over-idealized this person, so that when degraded actions come about, I automatically want to refuse them, sweep them out, and say, this is not so. This can't be. I want this to work so much that I'm willing unconsciously to sweep out all evidence to the contrary. So the mind has a way of wanting to find the reasons to keep that over-idealized vision of them, and because it's less painful. And so it takes a conscious effort, i.e. an awareness, i.e. creating a new neural synapse in the engaging in the neuroplasticity, which is really coming to a better, more refined, more sophisticated understanding of this person. They are not dancing with you, they are walking on you. They are violating your boundaries. So hitherto, perhaps, violation of your boundary was a feel-good thing or a normal thing or a natural thing earlier in your life journey. And it's to say, wow, violation of boundaries is not what love is, because oftentimes people have equated love with being violated. They've equated love with being abused. They've equated being having self-esteem as being walked over or used up, squeezed out, starved out emotionally, to negate themselves. It's the Mother Teresa complex. It's the, if I give all, then I will be a heroed person. So it's to, kind of correct that understanding within yourself, and to realize and see what it is, because it's to know that this person is heartless. It is to know that they lack empathy. It is to know what they are capable of. So you have to have that understanding in time that is set aside. So for example, working through these in the privacy of this video, it's to know what has gone on, what has transpired. So when they come back and then you see these things, or they, want you to, come back to them, or to help them make decisions, to be there for them, when clearly it is their responsibility and accountability to do certain things. They need to be responsible for a decision. They need to be, because, if they're trying to make you take them back, get back to the lower rung of, of relation, i.e. they're placing value on you for how you assist them where it's needed, not deserved, then all of a sudden you are now in a trauma bond. You are now in an enmeshment. You are now inextricably held accountable for the outcome of that decision, which is not your responsibility to begin with. So especially those people who have been manipulated early in life and have had to go through this with things like, relationships like with their parents, feeling like they have to be responsible for their parents' emotional happiness. If their parent was a psychopath, a borderline, or a narcissist, and they're to fly into these rages of unhappiness, the children automatically feel responsible and accountable because this is their caregiver. Hey, if this caregiver ain't focused, I ain't got a place to live. It's basically, I don't got happiness. I got, unhappiness. I got bombs flowing. I got emotional ticking going on around here, and I better make sure that it doesn't bust open at the seams. So I must be like a watchdog for this person 24/7 and make sure somehow in my own immature way that I'm able to prevent an outbreak of this mature disordered person. So all of a sudden you become responsible for their emotional evolution, their emotional blow-ups, their emotionality and the uncertainty. So you're trying to forecast some uncertainty that you don't have the formula, you don't have the physics, you don't have the chemistry formulation to try to figure out. So you're like toiling away laboriously in the night trying to figure out how to do this. During the day, you can't live your life because you're trying to figure out how to assimilate what is going on with this adult and belay their fears, belay their concerns. You take on responsibility that is not your responsibility to begin with. And so it feels very guilty to let that go because you love this person unconditionally. You love them unconditionally. They've slapped you in the face. You still love them. They've caused you to not, be able to focus, to have insomnia. You still love them. They have, caused you an immense emotional pain, physical pain, loss in relationships, PTSD, a feeling of helplessness. You still love them. Do you see what is going on here? You are inextricably, you have loved them unconditionally, which means in sickness and in health, for good or for poor, for richer or for poorer, for good or for bad. So you have loved them unconditionally. But it is, when that happens though, and when you love an abuser unconditionally, you're then opening up the door for just like, take me as I am yours to use as you please and treat as refuse and discard. So do you see the position that you are putting yourself in now that you are aware? So it is to say unequivocally, it is because I have loved them unconditionally that I'm feeling the growing pains of guilt. It is difficult for me to turn my heart away from this person and just be like a bystander and have tough love. It is to say unequivocally, though, that this person is responsible and accountable for these decisions. Not only that, because I don't want to be held accountable for what goes on and then have the repercussions come back on me when they're going to have to be responsible and accountable. So it's to see this very, very clearly, not a little clearly, not somewhat clearly. Well, I think it could be the case. It probably is. It has to be without probability. Statistically understood 100% that those are their feelings. I can't control their feelings. To be able to do that would be to herald the impossible. And even Hercules couldn't do this. So why am I trying to make myself a superhero, some sort of catalyst to doing some sort of miraculous that is to a power greater than myself? Why am I taking that on? It is to understand the cause that has created the effect and why this is. And so when you're able to then separate yourself from this and say, kind of come from an objective sense within yourself, okay, I understand objectively how I was implicated and drawn in, and my boundaries were violated, and I was, misinterpreting things. I was, abuse is not love. Being put into fight or flight is not love. To be seduced back into this is not love. It is not getting me what I think the seduction is going to get. It is not going to bring me to the outcome that this behavior is going to give. So the behavior then is rendered ineffective. You have to it becomes a place of self-correction. And oftentimes it is understanding I guess what they would call the pregnant moment, or the evoked response. So in other words, the stimulus, the trigger, that which gets you into the guilt. It's to understand the stimulus that creates that response within you, that emotional response. And so it is to understand that you don't want to be neglectful. You still kind of want this person in your life, yet, they are this way. And so it is to kind of correct that and say, okay, this person is in my life, but I don't want them in my life in this abusive manner. So therefore, I'm going to say no. So you get to have your cake and eat it too, whether they're quote unquote in your life or in life. So it's just to say, I don't wish them gone, but it's to say, I want this person still in life, but I don't want them in the way that they have abused me. And so the answer is to be no. And it is to be able to think clearly in that regard. So your thought process will be more clear because your emotions are more coherent. They are more cohesive with what is in your best interest. It is to go through that energy shift and say, actually, I am responsible and accountable for what's going on right here. This is the seat of importance. I am a person of value. When I treat myself with positive self-regard, the good will come into my life. And that is what is required. That is what is needed. That is what is wanted. So, because to do the contrary is to commit to a life of struggle, unhappiness, failure, defeat, helplessness. It is to commit to that outcome. So, seeing now to be the case that is, not really where you want to be, because that's a very lonesome, isolated, scary place to be. So it's to say, okay, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, gave the t-shirt away, I ain't going there. I might kind of remember, I have a souvenir of that in my mind, but, enough is enough. And so you're able to draw the line, but oftentimes, the guilt will plague you until the pain is great enough. So unless you want to plummet back down to where you've been before and backslide, you reach a certain point in your growth where you ain't going back. You ain't, walking on the slippery slope without a rope. You're not going to shimmy down that chasm. You're not going to go, willingly drop yourself into a pile of burning lava and to think that you're not going to get scorched. I mean, if the earth is scorched, you ain't going to build a house there. I mean, why would you want to do that? So, it is to understand the distinction. And that is, it is to get through. So that will help you to feel some relief in your decisions. And it's oftentimes difficult to work through this, once again, while you're in the midst of it, while you can't see the forest for the trees, while enough time and experience is not passed, that you're still able to see it. So especially when it's very soon after going no contact, that it's oftentimes most difficult. And so the more time and experience occurs, and you see kind of what this person has done and what they're capable of, and what's what, you need to cut it off immediately. And the quicker you can do this, the better. The more practice you get, the better. Perfect practice makes perfect. So practicing in the awareness that you have that is created within the privacy of this video is to come to terms, and then what I call your internal dialogue. You have to have that internal dialogue and get the clarity there. Knowing this to be the case, I am not going to imply myself in a relationship with this person because I know better. In just, 8 to 10 words, it is that statement to yourself. I know better. And, and to know is to know. It's not to think, to ponder, to a probability. It is to know. And when you know, you are certain. And so when you come from this place of certainty, you can come from more of a place of serenity and peace, and you're able to be respond rather than react. And so if you are still kind of like weak emotionally and you're starved out emotionally, where you still want this person, then you're going to be reactive and then want them back. But during your course of time in the relationship, you should be able to move through that reactive phase to the response, so that you can then, protect yourself, and that, and then not be plagued by the feeling of guilt, not being set back, because guilt is kind of like an emotional speed bump. It'll kind of throw you for a loop, and you're kind of out of your stride, and it'll take up a house in your consciousness. It'll take a lot of emotional energy that you could be using for other things in your life, for moving on, for working on your recovery date, thinking about you, thinking about what's important to you, thinking about the finer things in life, enjoying the finer things in life. It's robbing you still emotionally while you're in that very mushy, while you're in that very swampy land where it's kind of yuck, it's kind of muck. You're kind of like, you're in the guilt, you're in the sludge, you're in, you can't really set sail there emotionally, because it's not good sailing ground. It's not good sailing emotions. And you don't want to stay in that transition area for too long, because it's not very pleasant. And you're getting caught in, the hover mill, if you will. You're getting caught in that trepidation and concern that you're doing the wrong thing. So the sooner you can move through that and then launch into really knowing what is up, knowing what is right, and enforcing that in the most courteous, sophisticated way possible, once again, it's just reinforcing your boundaries. It's being able to say no, thank you. I'm not responsible here for that. It's a learning moment. So it's to say, I'm not going to be really made to be placed in this role. So it's to step out of that role and send to them a very clear message that you can no longer be a go-to hover person, and so you're not going to take second fiddle, third fiddle, eighth fiddle, 100th fiddle. So, the only time that they come to you is when they want something and they want to hover you back. And it has nothing to do with a real relationship. It has everything to do with feeding their ego, being responsible where you don't need to be, and then placating to a falseness where, you don't want to placate to the falseness, because that's depriving you of your authenticity, your authentic life, your needs. And once you reinforce this with time, repetition, and experience, you will become stronger, and you'll actually be filled up by more of the positive for which you are seeking. The doors will open, and you will get with what you deserve in those positive experiences. And you will hitherto then begin to combine those, so you're no longer having a difficulty reinforcing the good life. The good life is yours there at your fingertips. And for the receiving, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. And I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.